That night, she stopped being my daughter, and I stopped being quiet.
The best gift you could give me is the day you're gone.
The best gift you could give me is the day you're gone. She didn't whisper it. She said it loud enough to cut through the clink of forks and the hum of the dishwasher at my own dinner table, in front of her husband, her kids, her friends. My hand froze, gripping the fork midair. The bite of lasagna never made it to my mouth. They laughed. Or maybe I just imagined it. Doesn't matter. Because I stopped being her father in that moment, and she stopped being my daughter. Before we continue, subscribe if stories of betrayal and justice hit home. Like the video and drop your thoughts below. It keeps me sharing. My name's Frank Marino. I'm 58 years old. I live just outside Toledo, Ohio, not far from the Maumee River, in a quiet neighborhood where the mail still arrives on time and neighbors still shovel each other's driveways. Or they used to. My story doesn't begin at that dinner table. No, that was just the crack in the dam. The real story started years ago, slowly, quietly, with good intentions. Like most fathers, I just wanted to help. I raised Madison alone after her mother passed. She was 9 when cancer took Lisa. Too young to understand why I'd stopped smiling. Too young to see the calluses on my hands grow deeper from all the double shifts I worked. Lisa's death didn't come suddenly. It came like winter, creeping in, freezing everything we knew a little more each day. I remember the smell of antiseptic in the hospital, the pale fluorescent light washing her face until it didn't look like the woman I married anymore. Madison would fall asleep in the corner chair, her head tipped against the wall, clutching that ragged teddy bear Lisa had sewn when she was a baby. When the doctors finally said there was nothing left to try, I went numb. Madison just stared at the floor, as if she'd slipped somewhere I couldn't reach. The night Lisa died, I stood in the kitchen long after everyone left, hands flat on the counter, staring at the dishes she'd never wash again. I promised myself one thing: that kid would never feel abandoned. So I worked. God, did I work. I owned a small tool and die shop on the south end of town. 30-year-old milling machines, grease-stained floors, the constant metallic scent of cut steel. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept food on the table. Some nights I'd come home so late the house was dark, just Madison's nightlight glowing down the hall. I'd kiss her forehead while she slept, whisper that I was trying. Every Christmas I'd slide a few extra bills into a Sears shoebox and label it Madison's Future. It became a ritual, late nights counting sweaty cash from side jobs, tucking it away, promising it would matter someday. By the time she turned 18, that shoebox held nearly $42,000. Every dollar hard-earned, every dollar meant to make her life easier. I still remember the look on her face the night I gave it to her, a mix of disbelief and gratitude that turned into tears. She hugged me so tight I felt her heartbeat against my chest. "Dad," she whispered, "I don't deserve this." I should have listened to that part, should have asked what she meant. Madison went off to the University of Michigan, communications major. Came back different, polished, confident, with that big city sparkle that made her seem older than her years. She started using words like networking and branding. She stopped calling me Dad sometimes and said Frank in front of her friends like it was cute. It hurt, but I let it slide. She met Mark during her junior year. He worked in real estate, drove a leased Audi, and wore those loafers without socks, the kind of guy who always seemed like he was selling something even if he wasn't. He was charming in a way that made you want to like him, but also kept you on guard, though I didn't admit that to myself at first. They got married in 2017. I paid for the wedding, not because they asked, because I wanted to. It felt like my last big fatherly gift. $18,600 all in. Flowers, food, band, sparkler exit, the whole Pinterest dream. I still have every receipt in a manila folder. tucked into my desk drawer. After the wedding, they hit a snag with a down payment on a house. Mark's commissions weren't steady, and Madison was just starting out. So I did what any soft-hearted dad might do. I co-signed. Even offered to let them move in with me while they saved. Madison hesitated at first, polite but cautious. "We don't want to intrude, Dad." But January 2018 came, and there they were. Boxes stacked in my living room, kids' toys spilling across the carpet, the smell of takeout drifting through the kitchen. It was supposed to be 6 months. They stayed 3 years. At first, I didn't mind. The house felt alive again. Mornings came with the scent of fresh coffee and the sound of cartoons in the living room. Madison baked cookies with the kids. Mark grilled burgers on weekends. I fixed leaky faucets and squeaky doors. Grateful to feel needed, they started calling it our home. I chuckled at first, brushed it off. That should have been the first alarm. One winter night, snow swirling outside, Madison sat beside me in the den. She handed me a manila folder, her voice honeyed. "Just some refinancing paperwork, Dad. It'll lower the rate, free up cash for renovations. Win-win." I didn't question it, didn't read it. I signed. That was my mistake. After that, things shifted. Small at first, subtle. They stopped asking if I'd be home for dinner. The kids started calling my bedroom Grandpa's space, like it was just a guest room. Madison began redecorating, new couches, a modern dining set, stainless steel appliances. Everything in her name, everything permanent. One afternoon, heading down the hallway, I overheard Madison on the phone. She didn't know I was there. "No, it's not his house anymore," she said quietly. "Technically, it's ours. Just waiting on the final doc from the clerk's office." My stomach dropped. I backed into my room and shut the door, hands shaking. That night, sleep never came. I stared at the ceiling while the house, my house, creaked and whispered like it knew something I didn't. The next morning, I started digging, pulled out the folder I'd signed, compared dates, Googled county property records. Those sites are a nightmare. Clunky, slow, but I pushed through. Page after page until the truth hit like a freight train. The title had been transferred. My name wasn't alone anymore. Joint ownership, Madison and Frank Marino, with a clause buried deep. In event of incapacitation or prolonged absence, full control may default to surviving party. It read like an obituary I hadn't agreed to. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed proof, so I watched, listened, collected. Bank statements with strange charges. $600 here, $200 there. "Home improvement," she'd say casually. One day I found a check stub on the counter, contractor's name, my signature at the bottom. Problem was, I never signed it. That's when I bought a certified document scanner on Amazon. Sleek little thing, fast feed. Started scanning every paper, tagging dates, saving backups to hidden flash drives I tucked into drawers around the house. They thought it was just me being an old man with gadgets. Let them. Thanksgiving 2022 broke the last piece of me. They hosted it, still in my house, but somehow no longer mine. Mark carved the turkey like a king. Madison stood with a wineglass, making a toast. "To new beginnings," she said, smiling at everyone but me. "And a family that knows when it's time to pass the torch." Applause. Laughter. I sat still, hands in my lap. Then she turned, locked eyes with me, and said the words, "The best gift you could give me is the day you're gone." The room went silent, then awkward chuckles. Someone tried to joke, but the damage was done. I didn't argue, didn't even finish my plate. I stood, folded my napkin, walked out without a word. The night swallowed me whole as I drove. I didn't know where I was going, just away. Headlights cutting through the flurries on I-75, wipers squealing against the windshield. I crossed the Ohio-Michigan border sometime after midnight and found myself at a 24-hour diner, the kind with flickering neon and cracked vinyl booths. I ordered black coffee, no cream, no sugar, just bitter enough to match the taste in my mouth. I sat there until dawn, watching truckers shuffle in and out, watching the world keep moving while mine felt like it had stopped. Somewhere between the third refill and the first hint of daylight, a thought settled in. Not to yell, not to beg, not to plead, but to fight back. Quietly, legally, completely. The next week I got to work, called the Lucas County Recorder's Office, paid $14 per document for certified copies of every title change, worth every penny. Paper doesn't lie. I found an attorney, Thomas McKinley, gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, voice like a calm radio announcer. I laid it all out, the papers I'd signed, the forged check, the whispering in my own hallway. He flipped through the folder, eyes narrowing at a clause, tapped it with his pen. This language, he said quietly, is deceptive. You've got grounds for coercion, misrepresentation, maybe even fraud. I nodded, but relief didn't come. Not yet. We filed a reversion motion. That froze any property sale or transfer. We flagged the bank account for fraud. We sent a certified letter to Madison. She didn't reply. But she changed. Stopped smiling around me. Stopped saying good morning. Stopped meeting my eyes. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know when. The letter sat unopened on the hallway table for 3 days. I watched her stare at it like it was a bomb with no timer. Certified mail always hits different. It doesn't beg. It doesn't ask. It declares, "This isn't a request. It's a record." On the 4th morning, she finally tore it open. I was sitting on the porch, nursing a lukewarm cup of diner coffee, when I heard the paper rip. The sound was small but sharp, like fabric tearing in church. A beat passed, then 2. Then, "Mark," her voice cracked, "we've got a problem." I didn't move, didn't turn my head. Just let the cold wind carry the edge of her panic through the screen door. I imagined her standing there, fingers trembling over the stack of papers, eyes skipping over legal phrases she didn't yet understand but already feared. The documents inside were plain, unassuming. 12 pages neatly clipped, lawyer's letterhead embossed at the top, county clerk's seal gleaming like a stamp of judgment. Page 1, summary of deed history. Page 2, legal explanation of improper clause insertion. Page 3, forensic breakdown of the forged signature, mine, on the contractor check. The rest, certified backups, deed filings, power of attorney revocation, fraud alerts sent to the bank, and right on top, the official motion to rescind all shared ownership rights on the basis of misrepresentation. Stamped, signed, logged, no room to argue, no cracks to squeeze through. Inside the house, silence swelled. It was the kind of silence you can feel, a heavy, charged quiet that prickles the air. She didn't say a word to me that whole day. Neither did Mark. I stayed on the porch long after the coffee went cold, eyes fixed on the street as if waiting for something else to arrive. But nothing did. That night they canceled their dinner party. I overheard it through the thin drywall, whispered phone calls, muffled excuses. "No, we may need to pause." "No, I can't explain. Just take it off the listings." "Yes." I set off. My jaw tightened. She had been planning to list my house while I was still in it. The next week, tension filled the walls like smoke after a fire. It crept into everything, the clink of silverware at breakfast, the way doors shut just a little too hard, the low hiss of whispered conversations behind closed doors. She cooked less, stopped baking cookies with the kids, stopped humming in the kitchen. Mark stayed later at work, or maybe he just stayed away. When we did speak, it was all clipped politeness, words with sharp edges. One morning she asked, tight and cold, if I'd seen the spare keys. "I locked them up," I said. That's when she snapped. "You're not the only one who lives here, you know?" I looked up slowly, letting the silence stretch until she had to meet my eyes. "No," I said, my voice steady and low, "but I'm the only one who built it." Something flickered in her face. Anger, shame, I couldn't tell. She broke the stare first, turned sharply, and stormed off down the hallway, her footsteps pounding like retreating drums. I kept documenting every conversation, every stray piece of paper left on the counter. I became an archivist of betrayal. I took photos of receipts, screenshotted texts, made copies of every email from the bank that showed unauthorized logins using my credentials. Each file got a date, a label, a safe digital home. I wasn't paranoid anymore. I was prepared. My lawyer, Tom, called every 3 days like clockwork. Updates came steady, his voice calm, measured. "Stay calm, Frank," he'd say. "We're tightening the screws, quietly." His steadiness was an anchor. Every time I hung up, I felt a little less alone. Then, one gray Friday, just before Christmas, I came home to find a stack of boxes by the front door. Mine. My shirts folded badly like afterthoughts. My tools wrapped in dish towels. My books tossed in sideways. On top, a framed photo of Lisa, face down, the glass smudged. And the old Sears shoebox I'd once filled for Madison's future, now empty except for dust, sitting inside a cardboard tray like some sad relic. Taped to the top, a note. "We think it's time you found your own space. The kids need more room. You'll be happier on your own. No signature, no heart, just tape." A final eviction from my own life. I didn't touch the boxes. I left them there. Let the snow drift in overnight, soft white powder gathering on the cardboard flaps. By morning, the stack looked like forgotten trash waiting for pickup. I took one photo, time-stamped. Proof. Then I walked back inside, calm as a priest before a sermon. At breakfast, I sat across from Madison. She didn't look up from her phone, scrolled like I wasn't there. I slid my phone across the table, the photo glowing on the screen. The boxes, the snow, the quiet cruelty. "Is this what family looks like to you now?" I asked, my voice low but clear. She glanced barely, scoffed, muttered under her breath, "If you're going to play victim, do it somewhere else." The silence after that was long and cold. Even the refrigerator hum felt louder. I stood, poured my coffee down the sink, the splash loud in the still kitchen, said nothing. But inside, something cracked. Not rage, not sadness. Something colder. Final. Later that day, I drove to the county office again. The lobby smelled like damp coats and copier toner. Holiday garlands hung limp along the counters, their fake glitter catching harsh fluorescent light. I pulled the updated deed record. My hands shook slightly, not from nerves, but from the sheer weight of what I expected to find. Sure enough, she'd tried to file a quit-claim form to override the reversion motion. Denied. The freeze I'd filed had blocked it. Still, she tried. That said enough. That told me exactly where her heart lived now, and it wasn't anywhere near mine. A few nights later, lying awake, I heard her voice through the thin drywall, frustrated, hushed, but cutting. "I thought you said the paperwork was airtight." Mark's voice snapped back, tight and defensive. "I'm not the one who filed half of it behind his back." "So what now? We can't evict him. We can't sell. We can't—" I didn't need to hear the rest. I rolled to my side, staring at the dark ceiling. By then, the pressure had already shifted. The power had tilted, and they could feel it slipping. That weekend, I sat in my truck, parked outside the same 24-hour diner where I'd first decided to fight. Same cracked vinyl booth visible through the fogged window. Same smell of burnt coffee drifting into the cold. But something was different now. I wasn't confused. I wasn't lost. I was loading the last pieces into place. I dialed Tom's number. "Ready to proceed?" I asked. He didn't even hesitate. "Let's end it." 2 days later, we filed the official property claim. Along with it, a subpoena for all bank records tied to the joint account she'd been quietly bleeding. Over $26,500 siphoned from my retirement savings to fund their new life. We submitted signed receipts, forged withdrawal slips, email logs showing Madison posing as me to authorize account changes. Mark was listed as complicit. His name was on 2 of the joint checks. No room for plausible deniability. They hadn't just tried to take my house. They tried to gut my life savings, too. Christmas Eve came cold and silent. No tree lights, no music, no smell of cinnamon or baking bread like the years before. Just Madison and Mark on the couch, stiff and pale, phones in hand but not scrolling. They hadn't invited me to dinner, hadn't asked if I wanted to help with the tree. It was as if I were already gone, a ghost haunting the house they'd failed to steal. I stayed in my room, the old letters from Lisa spread across my bed like quiet company. Her handwriting felt like a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. At 6:43 p.m., the doorbell rang. I heard the crunch of boots on snow. A knock, a pause, then Madison's voice, sharp with panic. "What is this?" Another pause, then louder, higher pitched. "This is a mistake. This isn't." I stepped into the hallway just in time to see the courier hand her the envelope. Stamped, sealed, notarized. Final notice of claim enforcement. She looked up at me, face drained, eyes wide with something between fury and disbelief. "This isn't real," she whispered. I met her eyes, steady, calm. "Merry Christmas." Then I turned and walked back to my room. She didn't speak to me for 3 days after the courier left, neither did Mark. The air inside the house thickened like smoke. We passed each other in the halls like ghosts, tight-lipped, eyes low, no acknowledgement, just silence, but not the peaceful kind, the kind that rattles, the kind that builds. On the 4th day, she broke it. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she hissed from the doorway of the kitchen. Her voice sliced through the quiet like a knife against glass. "Dragging your own daughter through legal hell over what? Pride?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, then down at the pot I was washing, the warm water steaming around my hands. She stepped closer, arms crossed tight against her chest. "You couldn't just leave with dignity. You had to make this ugly." Still, I said nothing. She was wrong, of course. I hadn't made it ugly. She had, years ago. And now she was just watching the mirror catch up. The next few weeks were cold in every sense. January slammed Toledo like a steel door. Snow coming down sideways, wind screaming through gaps in the old siding. The furnace in the basement moaned each morning as it fought to keep the house above freezing. Pipes knocked like bones. I kept my routines. Coffee at 6 sharp, shoveling the porch before the sun broke, changing the air filters, checking the sump pump, the kind of small, quiet maintenance that keeps a house alive. She acted like I didn't exist. Footsteps above me, but no words. Doors opening and closing, never knocking. One morning, I reached for my Ford keys on the hook by the door. Gone. Checked my dresser for the spare set. Gone too. My chest went hollow. I stepped out onto the driveway and saw it. My truck boxed in, her SUV parked diagonally, nose almost kissing my bumper. Close enough to scrape if I dared move. I stood there a long second, breath fogging in the sharp cold. Then I pulled out my phone, one photo, time-stamped, and I called a tow. The driver arrived 20 minutes later, big diesel wrecker rumbling loud enough to shake the icicles off the eaves. Chains clinked against steel as he lowered the lift. She ran outside in slippers and a parka, hair wild, shouting before her feet hit the snow. "You're insane. This is harassment." I faced her across the frozen driveway, calm. "It's my driveway," I said evenly. "Your car's getting towed. Take it up with the city." For a second she looked ready to spit nails, but she stopped. She knew I was right. Her shoulders dropped with a hiss of breath that turned to fog and vanished in the cold. The truck pulled away with her SUV, taillights glowing red against the gray. She stormed back inside without another word. I followed later, slow and deliberate, boots knocking snow from the porch steps. The balance had shifted. We both felt it. After that, it wasn't just legal anymore. It was personal. Deeply. She whispered on the phone one morning, unaware I was on the other side of the thin hallway door. "He's trying to destroy me," she said, voice trembling, "like I'm just some stranger." A long pause, then quieter, raw. Maybe he was never really a father. I closed my eyes, fists curling. It wasn't anger that rose. It was grief, old and bone deep, the kind that doesn't shout, it just sits heavy in your chest like wet cement. It felt like watching someone you love burn the house down from the inside, and then blame the smoke on you. Memories came like sudden gusts that week. Madison at 5, sitting on my shoulders on the 4th of July, sparkler in her little fist, laughing so hard she nearly toppled us both as fireworks burst over the mommy. Madison at 10, kneeling beside me in the garage while I changed brake pads, her hands greasy, face glowing with pride that she was helping Daddy. Madison at 17, crying into her hands at the kitchen table after she got rejected from her dream school. Me pouring us both coffee, saying nothing, just sitting until the storm passed. She used to call me her rock. Now she called me deadweight. The court date loomed. She tried to stall, filed a continuance, claimed emotional distress and invasive tactics. But my lawyer came armed, calm, methodical, relentless. We had everything: the forged check, the misrepresented clause in the deed, the unauthorized bank withdrawals. And then we had something else. A voicemail. She hadn't realized her phone had butt dialed me one morning. I got 2 minutes of crystal clear audio, her bragging to a friend. He's clueless. The way he just signs things, like a child. He deserves to lose the house. I earned that. It ended with laughter. That was enough. The preliminary hearing came on a wind-bitten February morning. The courthouse steps were slick with slush. I remember the sound of my boots on the tile lobby floor, hollow and steady. She arrived polished to perfection. Tight bun, sharp coat, face layered with makeup like armor. Mark trailed behind in a navy suit that didn't fit quite right, shoulders too tense to belong to someone confident. I wore my work boots and my old brown leather jacket, no costume, no pretense. My lawyer, Tom, did the talking. Calm but lethal. I sat silent, eyes locked on hers. She never met them, not once. The judge, a middle-aged woman with steel-gray hair and a voice like tempered glass, reviewed the packet slowly, page by page. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the far wall. Finally, she looked up. Based on the evidence, this court finds that the deed transfer was executed under misleading conditions. The respondent, Madison Marino, acted with intent to deceive. Her gavel didn't slam. She didn't need theatrics. All financial rights and ownership are reverted to the plaintiff, Frank Marino, effective immediately. Just like that, it was done. No shouting, no fireworks, no television drama, just justice. Clean, final, irrefutable. She cried in the hallway after the ruling, mascara streaking black across her cheeks. Mark stood stiff beside her, pale, lips pressed so thin they nearly vanished. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, just walked past them into the biting February air. For the first time in months, I could breathe, really breathe. The cold tasted like steel and pine, like freedom, like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. Back home, she was waiting, alone. She sat on the edge of the couch, shoulders rounded, hands twisting together until the knuckles went white. She didn't look up when I stepped in and closed the door behind me. The furnace hummed. Snow tapped at the window. Finally, she spoke, voice small. Was I really that bad? I looked at her, my daughter. Same dark eyes Lisa had. Same little mole on her cheek I'd kissed the day she was born. And for a moment, a part of me ached to go back. To the girl with the sparkler. The girl with greasy hands in the garage. The girl who once called me Rock. But that girl was gone. I didn't answer with cruelty. I answered with truth. You didn't have to love me forever, I said quietly. But you could have at least respected what I gave? She blinked fast, eyes glassy, mouth opening as if to argue. But nothing came. Silence fell heavy between us. I turned and walked to my room. Didn't slam the door, didn't look back. 2 weeks later, she moved out. No apology, no goodbye, just gone. She didn't leave quietly. She didn't leave fast. For 2 weeks, she dragged it out like a slow, bitter funeral, one box at a time, one tearful display after another. Every trip to the car came with exaggerated sighs and loud footsteps. Every time she lifted the trunk lid, she slammed it shut hard enough to make sure I heard. The house groaned with the sound of cardboard scraping on hardwood, tape ripping, closet doors banging. The kids never said goodbye. They darted past me with eyes lowered, shoulders hunched, carrying iPads and backpacks like shields. Mark didn't lift a finger. He stood around scrolling his phone or disappeared altogether, leaving her to haul the weight of their lives alone. But I didn't react, not once. That was the revenge. No raised voice, no slammed door, just a man sitting in the home he built, sipping his morning coffee while the lies packed themselves and drove away. She moved into a condo across town, paid for by the scraps of her savings. What was left after the court reimbursements, legal, fees, and the monthly restitution she now owed me. My lawyer had tallied the numbers in one neat sheet. What she owed, what she'd lost, what she'd tried to take. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about accountability. She'd spent years telling herself I'd never fight. Years rehearsing a world where betrayal came cheap and clean, where I'd swallow the hurt and fade out quietly. Now she had to live in the real one. But the final play hadn't happened yet. I waited. The legal win was enough on paper. Quiet, tidy, official, but invisible to the world. And Madison, she lived for appearances. She curated her image like a brand. PTA mom, real estate investor. Instagram perfect smile with carefully staged holiday decor. The kind of online life that sparkled even when reality rotted. She still told people she was the homeowner. Still filmed the videos on my front porch as if the house belonged to her. One cold January evening, I found a clip while scrolling aimlessly, a holiday reset vlog. Madison wiping counters, sipping coffee, telling her followers she was refreshing her home for the new year. My home, my counters, my porch light glowing behind her like a prop. That's when I made the call. Tom and I compiled every document, deed filings, forged check analysis, the court's final ruling, into a clean public record summary. No commentary, just facts. We filed it with the county so it would be accessible to anyone who searched. Then, with Tom's help, we drafted a formal letter to the Homeowners Association. It was short, professional, and devastating. Fraudulent activity, false ownership claims, and the resolved court decision, attached with stamped copies. The HOA president, Carol, was an old-school watchdog with a voice like a lawnmower blade and a zero-tolerance policy for liars. She didn't just file it away, she forwarded it to the entire community mailing list. Every neighbor, every vendor, every realtor in our zip code. It landed like a bomb. 3 days later, I was at the local hardware store picking up driveway salt when a man tapped me on the shoulder. "Hey, Frank, heard what happened?" he said, voice low but warm. "Just wanted to say you handled it like a gentleman." I blinked, caught off guard. "Appreciate that." It happened again at the post office. A quiet nod from a clerk who'd seen me mail all those certified letters. Then at the bank, where a teller leaned in and whispered, "Good for you. People think they can just take." Even at the diner, my diner, the one with the corner booth and endless coffee refills, an older guy stopped by my table. "Proud of how you stood your ground," he said simply before walking out into the snow. People knew, not because I shouted, not because I sought sympathy, because truth has weight, and once unchained, it travels fast. Then came the final act. I still had one document left, one last receipt that hadn't seen daylight. It was the power of attorney revocation, my original signature voided. Next to it, proof of misuse. Timestamps, emails from the bank, handwriting analysis. 7 separate attempts to imitate my hand. 7, each one a felony by state law. I hadn't pressed criminal charges. Not yet. But I kept that folder ready, sealed, and waiting. Because real power isn't noise. Real power is restraint. If she ever tried again, if she poked the bear one more time, it would be the first envelope I'd mail. Late February. The snow had started to melt into gray slush along the curb when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Mark, alone, hands jammed deep into his coat pockets, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. "She told me everything," he said quietly. I stayed silent, leaning on the door frame. He stared at the porch boards, then back up at me. I didn't know she'd forged the check. I didn't know about the power clause. I thought it was just a "Save it," I cut in, voice flat as cold steel. "You knew enough to keep your mouth shut when it made life easier." He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. "Can I ask you something?" I raised one eyebrow. "Why didn't you press charges?" For a moment the question hung there, raw and heavy. I let the quiet stretch until he squirmed. Because I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But what I said was this: because teaching her to lose everything was more permanent than jail time. His face changed. Some mix of shame and understanding flickered and died. He gave a small nod, turned, and walked back down the steps without another word. I closed the door, and for the first time I didn't feel rage, just finality. That same day I finally cleaned out the spare bedroom, not out of spite, out of clarity. I boxed up the last of Madison's forgotten things: a baby photo with a smear of chocolate across the corner, a cheap silver bracelet she'd worn in middle school, a half-filled journal with a doodle of a little house and stick figures, labeled "Me and Daddy." I almost threw it away, but I didn't. I put it in the attic. Because memory shouldn't be erased. It should be stored, filed away where it won't trip you every time you try to move forward. March came slow, gray skies, wet roads, the smell of thawing earth. Rain swept across the windows, washing winter off the glass. A final letter arrived from the court, confirming everything. The property restored solely to my name. Fraud alerts closed, deed updated, restitution payments scheduled and monitored. It was done. No more steps, no more traps, just road. That weekend I repainted the porch railing. Walmart had an off-white exterior paint on sale, 2 cans for $10. I grabbed them along with a new brush and came home to work while the sky hung low and quiet. The air smelled like wet wood and new beginnings. At some point I caught myself whistling, a low, wandering tune. It startled me because I hadn't heard it in years, not since Lisa, not since before the fight. I kept going, stroke after stroke, until the rail gleamed fresh and clean. Sunday night, I made dinner for one. Steak, medium rare, baked potato with butter melting into golden pools, steamed broccoli, bright and tender. I plated it carefully, the way Lisa used to when she wanted to make an ordinary night feel a little special. Then I sat by the window, eating slow, watching headlights drift along the road outside. Snowflakes floated down again, light, harmless, almost playful. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like mine. Not because the paper said so, because it was quiet, safe, honest. I leaned back, let the silence fill the room, and just breathed. And for the first time in years, I smiled, because the storm was over. I didn't hear from Madison for almost 2 months after the certified folder landed in her lap. Not a word, no text, no call, just absence. And for a while, I'll admit, I kept waiting, kept checking the phone before bed, kept glancing out the window whenever a white SUV passed by, half hoping, half dreading. Because even after everything, even after the forged signatures, the insults, the courtroom lies, she was still my daughter. But silence can teach you more than words ever will. Silence is where truth lives. And this time, the truth was simple. She was never coming back, not the way I remembered her. Spring arrived like a shy guest that year. Snow melted slow. retreating into gray gutters and leaving brown patches across the yard. The air still bit in the mornings, but softened by noon. I spent those mornings fixing, repairing, reclaiming, one small piece at a time. The porch swing had a cracked chain. I replaced it. The fence gate groaned when it closed. I oiled it until it swung smooth as breath. The flagpole was missing a clip. I tightened a new one with cold fingers. Each repair felt like reclaiming an inch of myself, not just the house, but the man who lived in it, the man who'd been told he was dead weight. Around the third week of April, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a text. A real handwritten letter, blue ink on lined paper, the kind torn from a spiral notebook. The envelope was slightly wrinkled, as if it had been opened and closed a few times before it ever reached me. The handwriting stopped me cold, still familiar, slanted left, same way she'd written birthday cards as a kid, the loop on her Y still stubbornly high. Inside were 4 paragraphs. No apology, just explanation. She wrote that she'd felt trapped, that the weight of my sacrifices had turned, in her mind, into chains, that living under the same roof with a man who'd given so much made her feel like she could never become her own person. She said pretending to own the house was her way of taking control, her rebellion in adulthood. She ended it with 5 words. Maybe we both messed up. I read it twice, slowly. Every curve of ink felt like a ghost brushing past. Then I folded it back up, slid it into a manila folder marked 2025, and filed it away with the rest. That was all the closure I needed. I didn't write her back. I didn't have to. Sometimes the final word is no word at all. That summer, the neighborhood changed around me. New neighbors moved into the Miller place down the road, a retired couple from Dayton. The first day they came by, the man wore suspenders and the woman carried a basket of fresh tulips and a cherry pie still warm. "You're going to spoil me?" I said, laughing as the smell of butter and sugar drifted up. The woman smiled kindly. "We heard you were the heart of this block." I blinked. "You heard that, huh?" "Word gets around," she said with a wink. And for the first time in a long while, that didn't sting. It felt good. I joined a weekend fishing group, too. Just 4 guys in a beat-up Chevy boat with paint flaking off the sides, puttering out on the Maumee every Sunday morning. Old country songs murmured from a crackling radio. Thermoses of lukewarm coffee passed between calloused hands. We didn't catch much. A few perch, a stubborn catfish or 2. Didn't matter. There's peace in drifting water, in the hum of a trolling motor and the silence between stories. Sometimes we'd talk about wives or old jobs. Sometimes we'd say nothing for hours. It gave me room to breathe, room to think. And somewhere in that quiet, I stopped asking where it all went wrong and started asking where I wanted to go next. Late August, I packed a duffel and took a road trip. No plan. No reservations. Just a full tank and the open road humming under the tires. I drove through farmland and factory towns, past old diners with neon signs buzzing against night skies, ate pancakes at counters where no one knew my name, listened to strangers' stories over burnt coffee. I saw the Mississippi shimmer gold at sunset, slept under desert stars in the bed of my truck, warm breeze sliding across my face, bought a pair of scuffed cowboy boots from a pawn shop in Amarillo just because they fit and felt like freedom. It wasn't escape. It was return. Return to movement, to simplicity, to self. One afternoon, heading home through southern Illinois, I stopped for gas. The station smelled like diesel and hot asphalt. Inside, a kid, maybe 20, baseball cap backwards, glanced up from behind the counter. "You're Frank Marino, right? From Toledo? The guy from the HOA story?" I froze for half a second. "Guess so," I said carefully. He grinned wide. "My dad showed me that newsletter. Said you were a damn hero." I paid for my coffee and left without saying more. But inside, something shifted, softened. I hadn't set out to be a hero. I'd just been a man who finally said enough. Enough of being quiet. Enough of being used. Enough of fearing the storm. When I finally pulled back into my driveway, the sun was low, painting the porch in long golden stripes. The house looked smaller somehow, not physically, just less heavy. I sat in the truck for a long minute, engine ticking as it cooled. My hands rested on the wheel, loose and easy. Then I stepped out, stretched, and walked to the mailbox. Inside was a single envelope. Return address, Lucas County Clerk. I stood there under the fading light and tore it open. Final confirmation. Case closed. Restitution fully paid. Deed secured. My name, only mine, on every page. I smiled. A small, private smile. The kind you keep for yourself because no one else needs to understand. Then I looked up. The road behind me was long, lined with ghosts and lessons. The road ahead, wide open. And for the first time in years, the weight was gone. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.